Hey there neighbors, Kevin here with eTrailer, and today we're going to be taking a look at and showing you how to install the Furrion Vision S Plus RV backup camera system here on our 2014 Primetime RV Tracer Air travel trailer. If you're like me and you leave work late on a Friday night, but you still have to pack up, get your camper all ready to go, and then get yourself down to the campground, and now you're getting there super late, and it's dark, and everyone's probably already started drinking and having a good time, so you really don't have that reliable person to kind of help back you into the campground. Well, Furrion started that, and they came up with the Vision S system and have upgraded it since to the Vision S Plus, so that way you don't have to rely on somebody else to back your camper into the campsite when you have low visibility. So taking a closer look at our camera, I just want to go over a few of the features. Starting out, we have 8 LEDs in the face of our camera, and what those are going to do is provide that nighttime visibility, which is going to be up to 16 feet. So when you're backing into that campsite late at night, you should be able to easily see. I mean, just from the little bit of testing we were doing when I was trying to determine where this was going to mount up, I flipped the lights off in our shop and it immediately switched over to that night vision, and I could see everything nice and clearly inside of our shop bay. But aside from that, we're going to have a 140-degree viewing angle, so we'll have a nice wide view. So we're not only just seeing the back, we are getting a little bit of the sides there. And then on top of that, we're going to have, in terms of signal strength, we're going to have a 492-foot maximum distance between our camera and our monitor when we're sitting still. Now, we were seeing a lot of people having issues with the refresh rate when it was in highway speeds. So that was a big thing that they kind of switched over with the S Plus here. This is supposed to be able to handle those high speeds and give you that live footage, so that way you're not having a delay where you might think someone's coming up alongside you, and then when you actually look over, they're not where you're seeing them in your camera. Now that distance is going to be up to 100 feet. So it's going to be a lot quicker and it's going to be a lot better, so that way you aren't accidentally pulling into something, which not as big of a deal with our backup camera because you shouldn't really be using that while you're just going down the highway as much, whereas the side marker cameras, if you do end up adding those on or you go with the kit that already has those included, it's going to give you a much quicker view, so that way you can be a little bit safer when you're out on the road. Now, in terms of this being waterproof or not, this is going to have an IP65 rating. To put this in plainer terms, if you are the person who's going to be pressure washing the side of your trailer and you accidentally spray the camera, you don't need to worry about it. It's going to be able to handle that without an issue, and it's not going to damage the lens or anything else. Now, I don't recommend purposely going and spraying it down. I would definitely try to avoid doing that, but if you accidentally do, or maybe it's just a super rough rainstorm and it's really just pounding down on it, you don't really have to worry about the camera getting ruined. Just make sure that you did take all precautions when you were actually mounting it up, and making sure that the gasket is nice and fully sealed up against the wall of your trailer, so that way you don't have any water accidentally leaking in behind the camera. So now that we talked to our camera a little bit, I wanted to get over to the monitor side of this, which is the majority of what you're going to be seeing when you're out on those travels. So it is a touchscreen. If you tap it once, it'll bring up the first screen of settings, then the second screen, which is our little guide here. Oh, let me hit that again. Timed out. And turn that on or off. We can switch to our different cameras, and we can also split it between multiple cameras if we wanted to. If we tap that again, that's going to give us our record option. So say we're out on the road, we see someone driving a little crazy, we're not too happy with how they're driving, we hit record, and we can start having that for the insurance company later on when they hit you. Other than that, you can turn off your side marker cameras, lock the split, so that way it doesn't keep reverting back. A lot of the time we were getting a lot of issues with the older camera systems where you'd have to go in and change the settings because it would keep swapping from one specific view over to a different one. That's essentially what that's going to be for, just locking that screen exactly where you want it. And then your volume buttons, you can turn the volume off, you can volume up or volume down, so that way if you have your buddy or significant other helping you back in and they're trying to help guide you, that you can actually hear what they're saying back at the camera. And then other than that, on the back side, we're going to have a button, and that is got a little power symbol on it. That's going to lead us to another set of buttons or settings, and right next to that, there's a sticker over it, but this is the SD card slot. So when we want to record, we can pop in a SD card and be able to actually save all of that video footage. But we can hit this, we can go into our video recording, we can go to our split screen settings, our profile for our camera. So maybe you have the settings just slightly different depending on who's driving the camper. Maybe you got multiple campers and you're using the same monitor. That way you can easily just kind of switch between your settings, have everything set up how you want it to. Display settings, so That's going to go through all the stuff you saw before, your motion detection. So say you are recording and using this as a security camera, you could then set up the detection, how sensitive that's going to be, low, medium, or high. So if a squirrel goes by, you probably don't want it kicking on and using up footage space, but you might if you're starting to have some issues and really wanting to make sure that your camper's safe. Maybe your permanent campsite and you just want to be able to make sure nobody's messing with your stuff while you're gone. Same thing, audio settings, you can change your date and time. So our date is obviously wrong here. It's 2025. So we can move that up, and it is 10/2. Get that set, and we're looking at 1 o'clock. $118. And that's going to also help with our SD card. So when you're shooting those videos, or actually recording it, you want to be able to make sure that you have the timestamps all right too. If there's ever in need of a software update, firmware update, you can go to that through your settings. Most of the time, you're probably not going to really have to mess with a lot of this. Auto dimming, probably be something you might want to play with, depending on what your lighting is. But for the most part, this camera should kind of adapt to what your lighting is, and you shouldn't really have an issue. As you can see, there we go. Now our time and date is actually set correctly. So that's just a little brief overview of it. Now, in terms of actually supplying power to the monitor, we do have a lot of people with newer vehicles where they don't have that 12-volt cigarette style plug anymore, so they can't really use this. So the only other way to power it is through a USB port. So Furrion has finally come up with a USB cable, because on the back side of our monitor, our plug is going to be just a Type-C USB style connector. So if you already have a USB-C style plug, you could plug right in and be good to power that up. And this is also going to come with 2 different mounts. You'll have your suction cup mount, so you can mount that up to the windshield, or like what we're using right now, is just a little stand display, which if this was a vehicle with more of a indentation where you have like that up above the dash storage, that'd probably be a better option. I'm not a huge fan of the suction cup because that kind of just sticks in your way, but obviously it'll be a little bit different for our neighbor because he's going to have a different truck. Now, most RVs on the market nowadays are coming with a factory prep with Furrion because they've done really well on the market, and they have really made their attachment or friendship with the RV manufacturers pretty well. So a lot of the time you're going to have a super easy install. You'll have just a faceplate to pop off, and then you'll just hook your camera right in and screw it to the faceplate, and you're all good to go. Now with ours today, it's a little bit older, so it didn't have that factory prep, so it was a little bit more work. There was a little bit more guesswork in there, and we did have to do some drilling that potentially could end up being kind of more of a bigger issue depending on what you start drilling into, because you can't really tell what's behind the wall until you actually look. So this install can be pretty simple in most cases. Every now and then you will have some kind of oddball situation depending on the trailer where, like with us, where we had to kind of do some exploring and figure out what was going to be the best way to mount this up so that we could still maintain our rear clearance lights. So if that is the case for you, maybe you don't have that prep and you just are a little bit too leery about drilling into the wall of your trailer without actually knowing what's in there, then definitely feel free to use our dealer locator, and you can find a shop near you to get it professionally installed. If you are wanting to do this yourself, then stick around and I'll help walk you through the process. To start off our install, we're going to need to figure out exactly where we want to mount up our camera. Now, with us not already having a factory prep with a shark fin camera that we could easily just mount on up there with the shark fin style mount that we have with our kit today, what we're going to have to do is start investigating what we can actually get into here. So I'm going to start by removing the cover for our center clearance light here, which usually you can just kind of pop these off. And then there'll be 2 screws to remove. Ours require a square bit. We're going to have wiring we're going to need to tap into for our running light signal to send power to our camera. So that way anytime we turn the running lights on in our truck, it's going to turn on our camera. Now I only have so much room to work with, and I wanted to mount this up above our light so that way we still had the light, or even below it. But we kind of got to look into our space here, because a lot of the time what they'll do is they'll run a cross tube or a stud, essentially a metal one, through the wall here, and then we really have limited space in what we can get into, and there's not really going to be a great option for me to drill super high up or super low and then kind of also try to drill into that while it's inside the wall like that. So now's a point where I'm going to kind of look around, see how much space I have, see what we can really do. I might not put this above the light. My only reasoning behind that is I don't really want this light to interfere with our picture here too, just from that shining anytime we hit the stop. It shouldn't really be a huge factor, but maybe when you're backing in, you're probably going to be hitting the brakes a lot. So in my eyes, I would probably be seeing that red light kind of showing up towards the bottom of our camera lens here, so that might be a little bit annoying. I might end up going below it, but I might tap into this first before we actually mount it up, so that way I can also power the monitor and then get a visual and see just how clear our picture is going to be, and that can definitely help us determine whether we want to go down or above it. For those of you at home, what we're doing right now is I put power to the camera, I put power to the monitor, and I'm just kind of double checking how this is going to look. Like I was saying, I don't want to have the light from our clearance light here fog up our view with our camera, but we also don't have much room when it comes to mounting this up, just because we need to make sure that we're getting the wiring to be able to pass through, and our stud kind of stops right here, so very small window for us to get our wiring in. All right, so after much debate, we've decided on what we're going to do, but I do want to give both options that we have thought of. Option number one, more expensive, but obviously the easiest of the solutions would be swap out the camera system. So this shark fin mount just obviously isn't going to be the right fit to go in here nice and easy, but Furrion does offer a different option. So they have one where it does have the clearance light already built into it. It's the same housing, so the backing will go over a little bit more and the camera is just going to be off to the side instead of our larger shark fin mount like what we have with this one. Now, the drawback with that is, like I said, it's more expensive and it's going to come with the two side marker cameras. So if you were trying to keep costs down, obviously that's going to be a bit more of a deal for you. Now, the other option here is we're going to be drilling a hole, and this is what we're actually going to do because we're going to be sticking with this camera system. I've marked out the shark fin camera just using our gasket as a template. We've got the edge. This is our edge right here for our stud that runs across. So if I go above this, I have to also now drill down into the top of the stud and be able to pass my wiring through, which is what we're going to have to do. So I need a large enough hole here to pass my wiring through, but also get a drill bit through so that way I can get down into that stud. So I'm going to be starting off with a 1-inch hole saw, and the top circle I got right here is actually where that hole comes out in our gasket for our wiring, but we're going to have that wiring kind of bundled up in the back here, so it can be a little bit lower, and since I'm drilling a bigger hole, obviously that's not going to be a big issue. I lowered it a bit though. I want to have this sit a little bit closer to the top of our stud here, so that way when I'm drilling down, I don't have as much to go through, because I am going to have to drill this down at an angle, so I don't really want to tear up too much of our trailer wall just trying to get that drill bit through there. So this is going to be our best option starting out, and now I can always go a little bit bigger with the hole saw. I can't add more back, so starting out with a 1-inch is, like I said, going to be our best bet, and we'll do this hole right here. We can clean that out, take a look through, see if we have any wiring or anything, because that's the other issue here is we don't know what's behind this wall. So very risky to start drilling through it, but we are going to make the best out of our situation. Now, we don't have super far, and you can even see when they drilled the hole saw through for this light, they hit the stud and like the tip of the bit is there. So I should have enough to go through just because our bit isn't too far out past my hole saw, but I do want to be careful. I don't want to go through and potentially hit an interior wall. All right, so we're drilling right into a wooden stud instead, but there is some kind of metal or something sitting here. It looks like it's running all the way down, so there probably was a strap right here attaching this wooden stud down into the metal stud. All right, so we've drilled our hole in. Now, unfortunately, like I said, there was a strap here, and this is the stud. So I took the bit out of the center of my hole saw, and I dug in a little bit more so I'd have enough room to get my other drill bit in and then get that down into our metal stud that we have running through with our wiring. Now I've taken the wiring for our camera. That's going to be the red and black wire with the already stripped back casing, and then on the other side you'll see a connector that's going to match up with the camera's connector. And I'm going to stick the camera side. This is going to live up inside of our camera and kind of in this cavity. The rest of this I'm going to shove down into this tube here. So to do that, I'm going to put my open end wiring through, because we also do need to tie that into our running light circuit. That pulled through. And then from there, we can uncrimp the wiring for our light. Now, I do want to make sure that I am paying attention to what's what here. So white and white, most likely going to be our ground. The green is, in most cases, typically going to be your power. Any other color that they usually use is typically indicating power. Now, that could be wrong, so I should honestly test this with a multimeter and make sure that that actually is power. So what we can do is we're going to go back up to the front. I'm going to put this back on our test box, then power through our running light circuit, and then I can confirm that this is our power. And once we have that confirmed, I'll uncrimp that, and we can start hooking it up to our wiring for our camera. And we're going to use some heat shrink butt connectors, which are not included with your kit. I'm going to have those separately, and I use that just because I want to make sure that this is nice and protected from any kind of water. If for any reason our seals fail behind our lights, behind our camera, and water starts leaking into the wall, I want to make sure that it's not going to ruin the camera and fry it just because some water got in there. Getting 11 volts tells me our test box probably is a little low on voltage and needs to be recharged. But I'm not getting negative, which tells me that I have these in the correct orientation, and that green is going to be our positive, white's going to be our negative. So if I flip-flop it, we can confirm that. We should get a negative number. If that is the case, which we are now getting negative. So that tells me I was right, and we are good to uncrimp these and start matching it up with our camera wiring. All right, so I've popped off the crimp-on connector, and I've separated, so I have my factory grounds, we have our light, and I've tied the light in with our camera ground. And I'm going to put on my butt connector. I was trying to kind of even it out a little bit and try to shrink this as small as I can here, because we do have to get it back into that hole. Crimp down on our butt connector. And then we're going to do the same thing with our power. Same thing over here. I'm just going to put the factory wiring together, crimp that down. And then I'm tying in the power with our light and our camera on the other side. All right, now we can grab our heat gun. We'll shrink down those butt connectors, and then we can start shoving our wiring back into our wall here. We'll also need to peel back our painter's tape, get that out of the way before we start mounting anything up. So what I'm doing right now is I'm trying to add a little bit of a stress relief for the wire. So I'm going to zip tie a little bit lower. I'd rather have it kind of bend here versus at the smaller behind or without the casing. Get that there, and then I'm going to just kind of run electrical tape around it to give it a little bit more support. And then we should be good to shove the rest of this back up into there. Okay, push that all in. It is going to be a fight just because we do have the butt connectors on there and the way the wiring is all together. And from there, we can pop our lens back off and put our 2 screws back in. Now I'm going to run a little bit of gasket maker over the top of this, help prevent any water from leaking in. I'm actually going to do it to all 3 and keep it matching. So it looks like the sealant on these has seen better days. I'm also going to fill in that hole we have for our wiring. I'll probably backfill this hole as well with some butyl tape, but I just want to kind of seal up the hole leading down into our wiring. And let that dry for just a bit, and then like I said, we'll cover up this hole. There's going to be the gasket that we have from our wiring, or for our camera itself, also going on there, so we're just giving it as much protection as we can. All right, so not only did I put that gasket maker in there, I've also put some butyl tape over it. We're about to get our gasket here. I snipped a little bit on the hole here so I could pop in my wiring. If I'd have had the actual wiring through it first, that's probably how they want you to do it, so you're not having to cut the gasket, but we already ran it down through our wall to get to our light, so not an option. But now we can grab our camera. We'll get the 4 screws out of our kit, and that's going to match right up with this just plugging in, and then we can kind of just fold up the excess wiring and tuck it into this cavity here. All right, so I went down to grab the screws, and unfortunately, it seems like they shipped us the wrong ones in our kit. They gave us the little tiny screws that go for this to actually mount the camera to the shark fin bracket, and not the mounting screws for the bracket itself. So luckily I am a hoarder of hardware, and I have some extras just like you'd see anywhere else on your camper. They'll use like a little button head screw with a square bit style head, and we can get these in, but I do want to make sure I have this centered nice and not crooked. Shoot a screw in, get this to stay up. I am going to need an extension. Careful with that too. This is just plastic. Don't go too tough or too hard on it and crack it. I'm gonna grab my level. We'll set that on there, make sure I have this perfect, and then I can shoot one of the other screws in on the other side. Now to mount it up, we can screw on our antenna. It sets on, you can turn this, it'll bend up. And now our next step is going to be pairing up to our monitor, which typically right out of the box, it's going to be paired. If you don't already have it paired, what you do is you put power to the camera, power to the monitor, and then down on the bottom there's this little button, which if I flip this up a little bit, we can get a bit of a better view of it, hopefully. So this red button right here, we'd sit here, hold that for 3 to 5 seconds. It'll put that into pairing mode. And if we're in pairing mode on our monitor, it'll then sync up the two and we'd be good to use it. Now, the last thing I like to do though is get my camera angled correctly. And what I want is I typically want to see just the edge of my bumper, so I know exactly where the bumper's at. So that way if I'm backing up, maybe there's like a sign or something, or trees telling me to stop, then I know exactly how much space I have. I can kind of gauge it a little bit better, because then I can see my bumper, know how close my bumper's getting to it, and hopefully stop before I actually hit anything. So I'm going to get power going to our camera again, power to the monitor, and we can take it take a look at it, make sure we have this angled correctly. All right, so I've angled it down. It looks like I can either get just the spare tire in the frame, or I'm getting about a half of the bumper. So, I mean, we get a little bit. You're not seeing too much. I think that's more just the lighting and the reflection here, but that should be enough to where we can easily back up and know how far away we are from something, especially because the spare tire is going to be sticking out. Plus, we're going to be adding on a cargo carrier onto his bumper, so he's going to have a few more things that are going to stick out back here. So this camera is going to be extra important, so that way he doesn't end up accidentally backing into anything with his added on length here with all of his other accessories. So with that, I think we're probably good with our install here, so we don't need to really adjust anything else. We're getting no problem with our signal. Now would be a good time to just run up to the front of the trailer. Let's hook up to it with our truck and just do a little test from the truck side instead of just cheating it and doing it with our little test box here. All right, so we hooked up to the truck. I left the bay, went all the way around our campus here and pulled to our outdoor studio just to give it a little test run. And the entire time I was kind of watching through the backup camera here just because I still have my running lights on, so it's still powered. So overall, I mean, all good. I think the only thing would be is just, fine-tuning that adjustment with the camera to exactly what you specifically prefer. I've thrown on the little guide arrows onto our camera, the little red, yellow, and green, so that you kind of get a little bit of a distance guide, so that way backing up's a little bit easier. And from there, I mean, it's up to our neighbors to just decide what he or she prefers is going to be the best view for that angle. So with all that being said, that's going to do it for our install of the Furrion Vision S Plus RV backup camera system here on our 2014 Primetime RV Tracer travel trailer. My name's Kevin, and if you still have some questions about what's going to be the right RV backup camera system for your specific trailer setup, please feel free to reach out to us via our Ask the Experts link, a comment on this video, or a phone call to our customer service department. We'd be happy to help you out on your journey.